Good morning, everyone. We'll call the September 4th, 2012 meeting of the Jackson City Council to order, and we'll call on Councilman Randy Wallace to lead us in our invocation and pledge. If you would, please rise.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of leadership you have given to the members of this city council. We ask that you guide us so the decision we make will be pleasing to you and make Jackson a better place to live. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Short and sweet.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nita, I think you can show all council members present. Item 4 is approval of minutes of the August 7th, 2012 City Council meeting, and council members received a copy of those. And if there's no additions or corrections, we'll accept those as submitted. Item 5 is invitation for public comment, and if there's anyone here who would like to make a comment during new business, if you would please rise and make your wishes known, if you would. We have one proclamation this morning, and that is for the Boys and Girls Club. Is there a representative here?
Yeah, she's back
Yeah, okay. Continue to appreciate our local Boys and Girls Club for what they do for the city each and every day. And we have a proclamation, whereas the children of Jackson and Madison County are the foundation on which our future success is built. And whereas children seek parents, mentors, and friends to aid them in reaching important goals. And whereas families and communities play vital roles in helping children develop a positive self-image, sense of belonging, and a sense of competence. And whereas Boys and Girls Club Day for Kids is a special day set aside in September to encourage and remind adults that the meaningful time they share with children is important to their development. Whereas the Boys and Girls Club Day for Kids Honor Roll, comprised of Boys and Girls Clubs of America and other youth-serving organizations, together reach millions of youth via their services and community involvement. And whereas Boys and Girls Clubs Day for Kids emphasizes the importance of meaningful time spent with kids on this day, every day, all year long. Whereas the Boys and Girls Club Day for Kids Honor Roll is working to establish a Boys and Girls Club Day for Kids on the national calendar. Now, therefore, we, Jerry Gist, Mayor of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, and Jimmy Harris, Mayor of Madison County, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim Saturday, September the 15th, 2012, as Boys and Girls Club Day for Kids. It's my honor to present this to you. Would you like to come up and speak to that?
Yes. I'll say a couple of words. Hi, my name is Jamela Salim. I'm Director of Operations for the Boys and Girls Club. Day for Kids is an important day because there's a Mother's Day, there's a Father's Day, there's a Grandparents' Day. And I think people assume that every day is Kids' Day, but it's not. And we want to celebrate our kids and let them know that spending time with them, meaningful time, is very important. And on September 15th, we're going to have a very fun-filled day for kids and adults to come out and show our kids, any kid in the city of Jackson, that we appreciate them. So we welcome all of you all to come out at 11 to 2 p.m. on September the 15th. Thank you.
Item 7 are first readings. Consideration of ordinance to close and abandon an unnamed alley running north between 129 and 131 Morgan Street, submitted by Healthy Communities, LLC. Stan?
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
This item was presented to the Planning Commission, and they have approved it, and you have the materials pertinent to this closure. It is an unimproved alley that's situated between two new homes that are being built. in our Morgan corridor, which is part of our redevelopment project there. And so by closing the alley, we get rid of an alley that's not improved, and we don't have to maintain it, and also goes into these lots, so they have a little bit more room to build those houses.
Okay, any questions from council?
Move the approval. Second.
Have a motion and second. Before we vote, let's open the meeting for the public hearing. This is an ordinance on first reading. If there's anyone here who'd like to make a comment either in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance on first reading. Being none, we'll close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 2 is consideration of an ordinance to change the name City Walk Plaza to Jackson Walk Plaza, submitted by Healthy Communities LLC.
You have the items pertinent to this request. Healthy Community found out during the naming process of looking at streets that City Walk was a trademark name by Universal Studios, so they've been asked to not use that name anymore. I guess they're afraid of our competition. So they've been asked to do away with that name, and so they've chosen Jackson Walk Plaza to replace that.
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Again, this is an ordinance on first reading. We'll have a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance, if you would, please let it be known. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 4 is consideration of ordinance to amend the official municipal code of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, Title 8, Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 1, Intoxicating Liquors.
Skipped one. Skipped one.
We'll back up to number 3. Under first reading, it's consideration of ordinance to change the name of a portion of White Street to North Shannon Street, running between West Orleans Street and Jackson Walk Plaza, submitted by Healthy Communities LLC.
Again, you have the materials pertinent to this request. The name White Street, again, this is part of the redevelopment project, and to be consistent across these names as they go up, we've already got North Shannon Street to the south, so we're just making it consistent all the way up to West Orleans.
Move the approval. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Again, we'll open a public hearing. See if there's anyone here who'd like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, now we'll go down to number 4. First reading, consideration of ordinance to amend the official municipal code of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, Title 8, Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 1, Intoxicating Liquors, Section 8.115, Location of liquor stores in district and zoning districts, to further define the process of amending the liquor districts and the liquor district map. This is a recommendation from a committee who looked at the districts of liquor stores, and they have a recommendation. This is the first reading in making this a part of city code.
Make a motion for approval.
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Let me also have a public hearing on the first reading, and I think we have some individuals here who would like to address the council in this public hearing. If you would, please just come up and identify yourself and have a seat.
Good morning.
As you all know, I'm Alan Salee. I was here at the last city council meeting, and I sent out a letter Friday. I wanted to make sure all the council members and councilwomen received the letter. When I was in here last time, there was no sense of going over the same stuff as we did last time, but I have with me 5 other store owners. There's a total of 5 store owners here today. One of the things that came out of the liquor committee meeting was that it seemed like we didn't have a whole lot of support for change, the way it went down. The Jackson Wine and Retailers Association offered a letter to the Liquor Zoning Committee. Of that letter, only 7 of the stores signed it. There's 5 of us that are against what we're proposing today. If we were to add liquor stores to the city of Jackson in today's economy, would you guys put the same restrictions as you did in not as you did, as the city council did in 1971? I think not. I think there would be a whole lot of changes to where the liquor stores are able to locate today based on retail growth and residential growth. I would just ask you, I know we can't change anything today at this time, but I'd ask you maybe to table the motion and do a little further research into it. If you don't table the motion and you pass, as you guys know, it cannot be brought up for another year. Some of us might not make it another year based on where we're located. There's 12 liquor licenses in the city of Jackson. That's an ample amount of liquor licenses, but we've got to be able to compete. If we can't compete, we can't survive. And I would just ask you to consider that and maybe look into some further study about where the liquor zones are and where the liquor stores are located. And other than that, I'd want to come up to you and plead one more time to take a look at that a little further. And thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Salih.
I have a question, Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did you attend any of the meetings of the committee that met
I was
relative to this?
not at the first meeting, but I was at the rest of the meetings, yes, sir.
Okay, and how many times did you all meet?
We met 3 times.
Okay, were you able to voice those concerns at those meetings? I
Yes,
assume
we
you were.
voiced those concerns at those meetings, and the committee came up with a way for us to recommend as a Jackson Wine and Retailers Association for change. But right now, we're split. So there's going to be very difficult for us, excuse me, for us to recommend any type of change because you have 7 stores and 5 stores. I believe that a couple of the other stores, if they knew the true facts about how liquor licenses are added to the city, they might change their mind on how they look at this. Some of them feel like that if we change the zones, there'll be an unlimited amount of liquor stores or liquor licenses available to the people or to other people to open stores. And from what I understand, that's not how things work here in Jackson, and how I've looked into it. It's got to go before a public referendum. But yes, I was there, and I did not sign the document.
Okay, and you said that you're here with 5 other owners.
Yes, sir.
Did they attend those meetings as well? to
No,
your
sir. Yes, sir. Bud, Heath did. The Lindsays were not able to. They had some illness in their family,
knowledge? Okay,
and they were up in Nashville. But
Okay.
they are here today.
okay. All right, thank you very much.
Huh?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Salih. Anyone else here that would like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and do we have a motion on that yet?
Yeah.
We do? We have a motion and a second? We'll close the public hearing. Is there any additional discussion on the ordinance on first reading? If not, council, please vote.
The motion passes with 7 members in favor, 1 voting no, and 1 abstaining.
Item 8 is second readings. First, a consideration of an ordinance to rezone property located on the north side of Bikina Drive, just west of Pipkin Road, from RS Single Family Residential District to RS PRD, Single Family Residential Plan Residential Development District, containing 48.75 acres, more or less, submitted by HTK Properties LLC. Ordinance did pass on first reading.
Move to approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 2 is consideration of an ordinance to close and abandon a section of Wilshire Drive running north to a dead end at the parking garage for the West Tennessee Surgery Center, submitted by Jackson Madison County General Hospital.
So moved.
I
Second.
have a motion and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 3 is consideration of amendment to Title 10, Chapter 2, Section 10-202 of the Animal Control Ordinance. Ordinance did pass on first reading. We will need to have a public hearing on this ordinance on second reading, and I'll open the public hearing to see if there's anyone here who'd like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 4 is consideration of the ordinance to reduce the number of false alarms in the city of Jackson. Ordinance passed on first reading.
Make a motion for approval.
Have a motion for approval. There's a second?
Second.
And a second. Discussion from council. Council, please vote.
Motion passes, 8 members in favor, 1 against.
Item 9, under new business, is presentation of the Jackson-Madison County Library's vision and plans for the future. I think we have the library board chair here and another member, Mr. Brandon McWhorter. Morning. If you all would just identify yourself for the record.
Members of the council, I'm Brandon McWhorter, chairman of the library board, and here with me today is Mona Miller. And also back behind me is Jerry Bastion, who is a member of the county commission and also a library board member, and also Bill Johnson, who is our latest library director. Been happy to have Bill. He's been with us for a few months.
Good morning.
We won't take much of your time today, but we did want to share with you some exciting things that we have going on at the library. Back a few months ago, we as a board decided to try to figure out a way to keep our finger on the pulse of really what's happening at the library. Been a lot of negative publicity, and we're trying our best to change that. And so some of the things that we've done is created several internal committees, and we've got a management committee, we've got a finance committee, there's a building and grounds committee. And one of the most important things that came along is a concept of a vision committee. That concept morphed over a period of months into more of a task force. And so we had a creation of a task force. We had 4 members from our board, a couple members from the Library Foundation, some from the Friends, and some from the general public. And we set out to figure out where we want the library to be in 5 years. Heard a saying one time that you can tell a lot about a community by the way that its library looks. And ours sometimes doesn't reflect the values and the ideals that I think that this council would want to project. And so we're trying to change that. And so our goal was to come up with the vision of where we want the library to be in 3 to 5 years. And not only that, to figure out how are we going to get there. To just identify how we want it to look is just pie in the sky type stuff, but we wanted to develop specific action plans. And one of those is being here today to talk to you about it. So Mona Miller is with me today. Mona is the owner of Strategic Excellence. She donated her time, energy, and efforts to help us walk through this visioning process. We met, I think, 4 times, 4 hours each. So Mona's going to talk with you about the process and about the results, but before she does that, Jerry Baston would like to say just a couple words, if you may.
I'd just like to say that the library board has had this presentation to the entire group, and we have embraced it unanimously, and so we expect to press forward with all of the points that will be shown here. And as well, we also expect to report to our funding bodies the progress in implementing this. And so we hope that you'll follow along with us as we go down this path.
Good morning. Good morning. As Brandon said, we spent 16 hours and it was a pretty intense process. I like to call it the good, the bad, and the ugly, and unfortunately we don't spend a lot of time on the good, but there are a lot of good things going on in the library. But a visioning process or a planning process tends to focus on the bad and the ugly. And this group was very candid and very open and went through and really looked at what are the issues that are affecting the library. Now, this is a 20-page document, and we'd be happy to email it to any of y'all who are interested in it. I'm just hitting some of the highlights just to share with you where we see ourselves now, and then we'll talk just for very briefly about where we see ourselves in the future. Some of the critical issues we're looking at is our community image. What is the general perception of the library in the area? Is it where we want it to be? Do people see it as a value and asset that it truly can be in the community? What does our facility look like? Is it welcoming? Do people feel comfortable spending time there? Of course, we have the new facility, a relatively new facility in North Jackson, but how does people's perception of our facility and people's comfort in our facility affect their usage of the library? Programming and materials. As you all know, everything's becoming more and more technology-driven, so how does a traditional library survive in the future where everything's going high-tech? So those are some of the critical issues we're facing. There's several others we talked about, but we did set forth some very specific action steps, and where we want to be in 3 to 5 years is we want our community image to reflect the value that the library has in our community, that it's an essential asset, and that folks that go out and sell Jackson to businesses and to companies coming in can leverage our library as a real asset and say, hey, look at everything we've got going on, as well as the symphony, as well as the Jackson City Walk, I think that's the new name. Everything else that's going on. We want the library to be part of that selling point and to be a real strong community image. We want our facility to be attractive, functional, welcoming. One of the things that was interesting, as a little side note, is all the folks who were involved in this, we shared a little bit about why we're involved with the library, whether it's through the foundation or friends or on the board. And several people shared memories of being dropped off as kids in the summertime to spend all day at the library and how much they enjoyed that. I don't think that's something that happens too often right now. But there's no reason why it can't happen in the future, that people feel comfortable leaving their kids there. There's excellent programming there for the kids. We'll continue to improve on that programming, but people feel comfortable and welcoming there to leave their kids there for the day or for several hours. And our programming and materials, high quality, attractive, relevant, especially relevant when you look at everybody's got iPads and e-readers and laptops, and they like to read on that versus a traditional book. But try to create that balance of how do we move forward in the future. So, but the most important thing, all these are a lot of details, and like I said, we can give you the whole document, but I think the most important thing we want to leave you with is that this was developed by really a broad group of folks. We have the library board, the Friends of the Library, the foundation, members of LSSI, county commission, and they have all developed a very specific action steps that says, hey, how are we going to get from here to there? So this is not just like Brandon said, pie in the sky. This is a working plan, and they're already working towards it. A lot of things are behind the scenes, but as Jerry said, you'll be getting regular updates on the progress of it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you all very much, and appreciate your service both to the city and the county as far as representing the Jackson-Madison County Library.
Excuse me, Mayor, real quick.
Sure.
Excuse me, ma'am.
sorry.
Could you email all of us a copy of that?
We would be
I know I
happy
would
to.
like it.
We'd be
I'm
happy
sure
to.
others would like it as well.
Thank you all. Item 2 is a presentation regarding the Gang Prevention Summer Program. I think Dr. Vicki Lake and maybe Amy Jones here that worked very hard on that program and wants to give the council an update. Good morning, y'all.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank y'all so much for the opportunity to be here. I want to first thank Mayor Gist for the opportunity to serve as chair of this wonderful group that came up with some great ideas. We want to share with you our first year summer results. I want to thank the mayor and the council for the funding that you gave us at the beginning of the summer, and we want to talk a little bit about how your money was used and what our results were. I want to thank Tony Black and the staff of the city who helped us so much with this, and we appreciate it so much, and the councilmen that served, Scott Conger and Johnny Dodd. We thank you for serving on the committee. I'm going to kind of give the overview, and then if y'all have questions, Amy can talk about their detailed work with the group and the tracking that we're going to do of the youngsters that were involved in this program. Did all of you get the report August 26th? So you have that current report that has the data. This was a great collaborative, an example of our community coming together to work together with the City of Jackson, Madison County government, Madison County Juvenile Court Judge Little, Madison County Juvenile Court Services under the leadership of Amy Jones, and the Southwest Human Resource Agency Workforce Investment Area 11 all came together. I want to talk to you about two specific programs that were funded. I do want to note on the program, the part of the plan that we presented where we looked at the neighborhood by neighborhood analysis, I told you that we were writing a grant to get a resource person to go into those neighborhoods and kind of help develop resources. That person was funded. Carissa Shimmer started work today. Her office will be with the Anti-Drug Coalition here in the community, and they will be moving to the foundation offices the end of this month. So that position did get funded. But to talk about the two other programs that we did, we had an employment program for youth ages 15 to 18 that was all of June and July with a week of orientation at the Jackson Chamber. And then we had a summer enrichment program for youngsters ages 12 to 15 all the month of July that was at Jackson State Community Colleges from about 8:30 to 2:30. And I want to call to your attention in the report some results that we have. We had 42 high-risk youngsters complete the employment program. We had 23 youngsters complete the enrichment program. During that time, what we did is we asked the Jackson Police Department, Madison County Juvenile Court Services, to compare the number of petitions filed and the number of arrests for youngsters June and July of a year ago, 2011, and June and July of this year while the program was going on, so we could see if there was a difference in these two time periods. The Jackson Police Department reported a decrease in juvenile arrests by 54.6% from June, July of 2011 to June and July 2012. And on page 13, you have the detailed breakdown of the decreases in the actual numbers. Madison County Juvenile Court Services reported a 39.7% decrease in the number of petitions filed by law enforcement from June, July of 2011 to June, July of 2012. We had 126 petitions filed in 11, and we had that decrease to 70 petitions in June and July of 2012. So we also, in the report that you have, put down what we thought were our successes and what we thought we could improve on if we did this a year from now. Out of the 42 youth, that high-risk youth that started the program, we did lose 8 youngsters we dismissed 8 during the orientation for behavior issues and failed drug screens. We also, 2 youngsters were fired during the program. So we feel that 100% success would be great, but we know this was the first year, and we did pick some the selection process was youth who had committed some serious offenses in our community. So we feel that that is just part of the process when you deal with the more troubled youth. We also felt very positive in that 3 of the youngsters continued employment after the program was over, and several youth were offered summer job opportunities next year. Participants received an average of $600 each month, with about $1,200 for June and July. Part of the process and part of the importance of this program was to put some money in these youth pockets so they could see what a hard day's work meant and have some money. And we were blessed to be funded by the city, the county, and the community development block grant that the city altered so it could come to us. So we feel very good about that. On improvements next year, we feel that we need to reinforce some issues with the parents. We need to talk a little bit more about what a payroll check means. The deduction process. We need to get with some banks to make sure that the youth have somewhere to get their checks cashed. So there's some issues, just procedural kinds of issues that we need to address next year. We felt the orientation, we probably need to divide the youth into 2 smaller groups and maybe have a group come in the morning, a group come in the afternoon. But you can see all the recommendations that we've made for next year. On the younger program for the 12 to 15-year-olds, we had 23 complete that program. We had Madison County Juvenile Court Services staff on site that entire time. It went very well. They had quality instruction the whole time in reading, math, and activities. They took field trips, and we thought one very good program component was the job shadowing that the youngsters did with the Jackson State Community College faculty and staff. The youth really enjoyed this. They took a couple of field trips that were really enjoyable. They went to the Safari Park in Alamo, and they went to the Tennessee Technology Center to learn about what they do there. We talked about some areas to improve. They received a $50 monetary stipend at the end of the program. We feel maybe we should spread that across the program, maybe divide into 2 smaller groups as opposed to having them all come at once. Both of these programs had celebratory receptions and banquets that both went very well. The employers, parents came, the youth came, and we both felt that that was very well deserved to have those. So I'm going to let Amy talk about any details, and we'll answer any questions you have.
We were overall very pleased with how the program went. My team, I was very proud of them, the way that they handled working with these kids and the families. My team was the boots on the ground, so to speak. They were out getting bus passes. They were making sure kids had ways to work and ways back home, that they had appropriate clothes to wear, if there was a dress code at their work site. They just did a phenomenal job of working with these children and families, and I appreciate the judge's input specifically because she did have a meeting at the beginning of the program with the children and their parents, and made her expectations clear, and then she met with them again at the end just to get their thoughts on how things had gone, and that was where we got some of the most, I think, most important input on things that we can do better if we are lucky enough to be able to do this program again next year. It was an eye-opener for a lot of the kids. They had some aha moments. I had several come to me after that first paycheck and say, "Miss Amy, something's wrong with my check. Somebody took a bunch of money out of it." And so we had to explain the concept of withholding and payroll taxes and all of those things. And we also discovered that a lot of our kids did not have a, for lack of a better word, a safe place to cash their checks. A lot of them were taking them to places that were taking 10 and 15% of their checks just to cash it for them because the family had no banking relationship. Or any place that they could go and get their checks cashed. So we're going to do a better job of that next year, try to enlist some of the banks and partnerships to avoid some of that. Overall, we were just very, very pleased. I'll address any specific questions that y'all may have, but we enjoyed very much being a part of it.
I had a couple questions if I
Yes,
could.
sir.
First, I would like to commend the committee, Dr. Lake and Amy, for your hard work. Surely it's been worthwhile, and want to congratulate you on the successes of the program. One question Dr. Lake had mentioned, at risk, and that's a broad definition depending on who you ask, but is your definition solely based on the criminal arrests of the young people?
The criteria was what we laid out in the original proposal, and I think there were 4 components. I don't remember specifically what they all were, but juvenile court involvement was one of them, yes.
Okay. And we had discussed that while we do know that maybe 1/4 of our kids are in trouble, so to speak, there are 3/4 that are not, but that could still benefit from the program. So I hope we're still working toward expansion of this. Secondly, will you be requesting a new round of funding next year for next summer?
Well, we're first going to look at any grant opportunity that comes along so that we don't have to rely continued on government funding locally. We'll see if that progresses. We plan to meet again in January, the committee, and kind of reassess where we are and work with Workforce Investment, see what funds they have available. We're not saying we won't come back, but we certainly want to look at every opportunity we have, beyond just relying on our local government to pay for this.
So the answer to my question is maybe?
Maybe.
Okay. And lastly, and I am very impressed with the improvement, but surely you're not suggesting that the decrease in criminal juvenile activities was based solely on the program?
No, but the facts, the way we had to, one thing we are going to do, Councilman, is Amy Jones, her staff at Madison County Juvenile Court Services are going to follow these youth
Okay.
to see if they have any petitions filed and what they are filed. So we can provide you reports in January and next year to actually see how these specific youth did. But the way we had to measure it this year was just looking at what happened a year ago with no program and what happened with a program this year. This was the measures that we had available to us. So it looked very positive. There may
Right,
be
I
other
agree.
extraneous. I'm not saying there's a cause and effect,
Right.
but that's just the facts. There was this decrease from this year
Mm-hmm.
on both indicators.
And on that point, is there an aftercare component, or are we just going to see if John got arrested again?
It depends on each child's situation. They may be enrolled in another program through juvenile court. They may be on one of our probation programs, something like that. If that's the case, then yes, we'll still be involved with those
Right.
families. But once they complete that, then that's the end of the court order component. That's the extent of our ability to force them to check in with us or anything like that. But we do have the ability, our normal tracking of recidivism is 6 months, 12 months, 18 and 24 months. We look back at those youth and see have they had any new charges. And we do that as part of our normal course of practice. So we will take this group and make them their own population and track them in the same way. So the answer is some will continue to receive services through juvenile court, others will not.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate you.
I think on behalf of the council, we certainly want to thank you all for your hard work and thank the committee who spent countless hours putting this program together. And obviously, for first year, it's very, very successful, and we need to work extremely hard to get our funding up for next year to where, 44 kids is 44 kids, but we have probably 544 that we need to come alongside. So thank you all very much for your report, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
Item 3 is consideration of resolution for the City of Jackson approving initial project actions for a hotel conference center project in the Jackson F.E. Wright Drive Economic Development District, parentheses, the TIF district. We have Andy Culberth, who chairs IDB, and Mr. Larry Butler, who is the attorney for IDB. Morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning, council. Good to see you. As I have today with me Andy Culberth, who is the chairman of the Industrial Development Board of the City of Jackson, and he has asked me to, I guess, make the presentation to you that we have to make, and then he may have some additions to it. I think to give you an overview of what's about to happen is that I'm going to give you a bunch of information. I'm going to ask you to do very little about it. And so that should be good, hopefully. This matter started about a year ago. You will recall when the Jackson Generals and the city entered into a restated stadium lease that was going to take the lease far into the future. And there was a section of that dealt with the possible development of a hotel and conference center. And that section is in Article 2 of the stadium lease. And of course, the council approved that lease and the provisions. The matter sat still, I guess, for a while, and then approximately a month ago, the IDB was contacted, the Industrial Board was contacted to begin the process of conducting a review of the hotel conference center project. As you will recall, under the stadium lease provisions, the conference center or convention center or whatever you want to call it, or what it ultimately comes to be, the construction of that facility is to be funded out of the tax increment funds. These are the tax increment revenues derived from the F.E. Wright tax increment district that was formed through the council in 2008. To give you an idea of how much money comes through the IDB on an annual basis from the tax increment financing, I think in the last couple of years, the IDB has received about $220,000 to $250,000 per tax year from that district. And as things progress and grow at the F.E. Wright area, those revenues should increase over time.
Because the tax increment financing is proposed for the conference center, there's where the role of the industrial board comes into play. It is the role of the board to actually screen these projects, and then once they get to a certain level of screening to where we think it's appropriate for the city council to actually take a look at it and give you approval, then we'll present it to you. Today, we're not here to ask you to approve anything as far as the hotel project or the conference center or design, financing, or any part of it. What we are here to ask you to do is to approve what the IDB has done so far. And what the IDB has done so far is basically hold a meeting last Thursday, a special call meeting at the request of the Jackson General Club, where their council and other people made a pretty lengthy presentation to the board about this hotel and conference center project. To give you just a general, quick Reader's Digest version of what they're looking at, it's going to be, they're looking at a 135-room hotel. You may have already seen some color renderings, perhaps, that have been circulated around on this. And the conference center, there's some question about whether it's to be attached to the hotel or whether it can be separate from the hotel. The IDB, when we first looked into this, the chairman asked me to go through the stadium lease and come up with a list of issues for the IDB to consider. The IDB has not really gotten into any detail about the project, to be honest with you. We are starting the process of asking lots of questions, dealing with the financing components of it, the exact location of it, whether the land will be available, the terms under which the land will be available, whether there's enough money in the TIF district funding to actually construct a conference center that's to your liking and design once we present you with something. So there's a lot of issues out there that we're just now starting on. Because these issues take a lot of time and they're going to absorb some of the IDB's resources, we really didn't want to go too much further or engage in that process of negotiating a development agreement until the IDB at least says, you know, what you're doing is fine, proceed in that direction, and then come back to us when you have more definite findings and have a proposal for us to actually consider. So today, what you have in front of you is a resolution. And what this resolution says is that you approve what the IDB has done so far. You're not being asked to approve funding. You're not being asked to approve commitment to the project. Because we have not presented you with one, but we don't want to proceed much further unless we have your pat on the back, so to speak, to saying, please proceed to go towards this development agreement. The IDB adopted a resolution last Thursday, and that's attached to the resolution you're being asked to consider today. The IDB resolution did 3 or 4 things. One, as a legal matter, it determined that a hotel conference center project is a lawful defined project that's eligible for TIF financing should the IDB and this council ultimately approve that. So we made that legal determination, and that is correct. And then secondly, the chairman is going to appoint a subcommittee of the board to actually interface with legal counsel to sort of reduce the number of people working on this going forward to get a development agreement draft in place and see how far we can go with that. And then also the board authorized the attempts to negotiate a development agreement. And when we get it in form that we think is in a detailed enough form for you to understand and act upon, then the IDB will bring it back to you. And that's when you will have a presentation that may take longer than what I am doing here today. So that's really all we're asking you to do today, is to basically move forward and let us go to the next steps of negotiating and see what we can come up with and get the details back in place. Now, I will say this, there's been some question about the stadium lease in terms of particularly Article 2K. As to the implications of the provisions of that lease. That section sort of gives about 4 or 5 sentences which outlines a lot of concepts And it's become clear in the last month or so, at least to me as legal counsel, that the attorneys for the club do not perceive as Article 2 as being suggestions or concepts, but they actually kind of see this as a contractual matter. And so the board is aware of this, and I wanted to make you aware of this, that we're proceeding in good faith to try to move forward. I would point out, though, that the board, the IDB, is not a party to the stadium lease. As you know, that's an agreement between the city and the county. The board obviously is sensitive to whatever this council tells us to do. Please don't mistake that. But in the negotiations, the IDB has laid out a ground rule of sorts that the IDB is not going to be bound by any specific or all the specific terms and provisions of Article 2 of the lease. Now, the spirit of it, I think we're moving forward with, but there are some areas in there that we feel the board might not be able to do because they might not be in accordance with policy or applicable law and some things such as that. But we're going to work through that for you in a way and screen that for you. So that's really all we're here to do, and if you have any questions, then we'll be happy to answer those as well. And Andy may have a comment.
I do. First, appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. I wanted to do a couple of things in addition to what Larry said, and first was to thank the board members for the meeting Thursday. As Larry said, it was a very lengthy meeting, and these are all volunteers, and we appreciate those individuals being there Thursday. And to thank Larry for his work that many hours on this. And then as he said this morning, all we're asking to do is to approve that resolution to allow us to move forward to the next step, to negotiate the development agreement, gain more details, and then once that is done, bring that back to you for your approval.
Okay. Any questions from council before we have a motion? Go ahead.
I serve on the liaison for the IDB board and attended the meeting where this big discussion went on about doing this. And I did want to just point out that I'm in favor of the resolution. I think that the IDB board, staff and attorney is doing the best job they can to protect the rights of the city as well as the IDB and ultimately the taxpayers of the city of Jackson. And I think that's what they're trying to do here. The one question I did have that we didn't mention, or you didn't mention the comments that you made, was the funding, the TIF funding to be used, what it should be used for. And my understanding is it's just going to be used for the infrastructure and the conference center itself. It will not be used to construct any of the hotel. Is that the direction that you're going in or leaning towards at least?
Probably. Under the stadium lease, it seems clear to me that the Article 2 states that the TIF revenues are to be used to construct the conference center only and for infrastructure. Now, the stadium lease doesn't say or clarify specifically whether TIF funds can be used for infrastructure for the hotel or whether it's for just the conference center. There's an ambiguity there. But again, that section is not very long. It's kind of short. My reading of it is that the infrastructure will apply to the site where both facilities are located. Infrastructure is defined as I recall, as being any streets, public streets, and utilities, communication facilities, and things such as that.
Okay. I guess I can't speak.
So, yes.
I can't speak for the whole council, but just from my personal feelings is that I would not be in approval of any of the TIF district funds going to be used for the construction of the hotel itself, just for the conference center and the infrastructure. So that was the point I was making.
And that's a very good point. And I think whatever we come back with, if we come back with anything, I mean, the fact that we're negotiating doesn't mean we get there, but we hope we will, and I feel hopeful that we will. If there's anything like that, it will be fully disclosed.
Okay.
And you have to approve that. The IDB cannot move forward with that type of proposal in the absence of your approval to it.
Any other?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Go
in
ahead,
other words,
Councilman.
Attorney, this is just a preliminary and a go-ahead, and you're coming back to us with final analysis and projections, right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, but just one that just caught my eye today, and I just gotta ask it. 16 million, 8 million, those two figures that you have in the resolution, what are you saying?
Well, it sounds to me like the convention center is going to be as big as the hotel, Councilman.
Okay.
Let me just say this. These numbers are, and I don't mean that. I don't know what design of the convention center will be. The resolution, the club, say, asked the board to put a cap on what it would do. I questioned whether it was relevant. I mean, what is a cap for? It means this is the most you can spend. It doesn't obligate you to spend anything. We accommodated them. I don't think that the TIF revenues, as I understand the cash flow from the TIF and financing, and Andy has studied this more than I have, I don't think at this point that the TIF revenues will support $8 million investment of any kind. Not yet. And so so that's a good question, Councilman. All I can say is we're not committing to spend 8 million, nor 1 million, nor $1 at this point.
So this resolution, in essence, is just for the go-ahead to come back to us with some numbers and some projections. And you said that the design of the convention center / hotel was going around, we hadn't seen any.
That's because the design has not yet been done, but before it came to the IDB, we received some color renderings. You know how these architectural firms will draw a hotel and it's all colored and interface it with the club, and it's about 5 or 6 pages. All they are is renderings. I'd be happy to send them to you. There's no secret about it. We've got 3 or 4 sets of those. They've changed. We started getting them about a month ago, and they've undergone some minor changes since then. And in the course of the application that the club actually filed with the IDB, and I can make that available to you for anyone who wants it. It had those renderings in there again, and it's going to be quite attractive if we can get there. Now, the budget, we have no idea what a hotel should cost or what a conference center could cost, but we're getting ready to learn a lot about that.
Thank you. Councilman Wallace, would you make that last statement again about with respect to TIPS funding that you're against? What are you saying?
The only thing I was saying is I would be opposed to any of the TIF funding being used to help with the construction of the motel or the hotel. The only thing I want TIF funding to be used for is for the construction of the infrastructure in the conference center.
Why do you make the distinction between the hotel and the conference center?
Well, the conference center, I think is going to be either a separate facility or it may be built as part of the hotel, but it'll be separate. I mean, it won't be in the center of it. It's going to be a separate facility.
Aren't both of those considered improvements to Pringles Park?
Under Section K of the stadium lease, which you approved, the concept there is that the club, according to the stadium lease, the club owns and operates both the hotel and the conference center.
Okay.
Okay? The IDB, and basically the chairman of the IDB has asked me to research these issues and come up with a list, and there's some level at the IDB, there's some concern, I think, about the club owning the convention center, that perhaps maybe should be rethought. And so we're rethinking that on behalf. I know that conflicts with what you've already approved, but we're going back and looking at lots of different things, including level of funding, and it points us in that direction. What Councilman Wallace is basically clarifying that the hotel, without question, will be owned by the club, and it will be a separate parcel of land that is carved out of the stadium area. That's already contemplated under the stadium lease. And so it will have its own freestanding facility. And so the city will not own the hotel, according to the documents we've seen so far.
But it will own the convention center? Is that what you're saying?
Well, now the stadium lease says the club owns the convention center as well.
Okay.
But now I'm just saying the IDB, at its level, we're not you, but at our own level, because we're funding, the IDB is control of the TIF funds. As a matter of law, we're looking at that and wondering if that's appropriate. We're suspecting that the IDB is going to come back to you with a proposal where the convention center will actually be owned by either the IDB or the city. Some
Okay.
city government will not be owned by the club. We're trying to change some of this, even though the club says it's contractual. We think, well, yes, it is contractual, but the IDB is not a party to that contract. So we have some ability to maybe add some flexibility to what I call a concept.
And seemingly those concepts will be clarified as you move forward.
Absolutely.
For our purposes.
That's right. And then you will have the final stamp on not just the concept, but the details of it. Once we get them to a point where the IDB thinks they're worthy of you seeing it.
Councilwoman Foote.
Yes, sir, thank you. I guess before I vote to go forward with this, I wonder what kind of marketing research you've done. I mean, what's the need for this? It's going to be beautiful, I'm sure. Will it be used?
That's a good question. When the application to the IDB was made, you got a copy? I do. I'll show you, this is kind of what it looked like. And included in here, there are studies from Sharon Younger and Associates. They're economic impact studies that deal with the economic impacts and spin-offs of revenue from a hotel conference center type development. Now, I have not, and these economic impacts produce numbers that are fairly substantial benefits from a tax viewpoint. But in all honesty, I've not studied them, Councilwoman Foote, and I do not know whether there's a market or not. At this point, I think the IDB, one of the IDB roles is to come back to you and answer that question, whether there's a market or not. Obviously, the club believes there is, and the club has engaged a very reputable hotel development company out of Nashville that purports to be a partner or will be a partner in the development and operation of the hotel. These folks actually are spin-off from Gaylord, which owned and operated the Opryland Hotel. So there's quite a bit of expertise coming into the market that has convinced at least the first reading of the board that there probably is a market. But as you know as well as I do, everything is in the details. In other words, you can always have a market for a hotel depending on how much it costs. And so there's just much to answer.
It would just seem that you would want to nail that first before you went to a lot of trouble with plans. You'd want to know if there was a need there for it.
Any other?
agree.
Yep.
What type of timetable are we talking about as far as coming back to us? 6 months, a year, year and a half, a month?
I think it will be sooner than 6 months. The club, we first heard from the club around first week in August, and at their request, we fast-tracked everything to accommodate them to get on an IDB meeting for August 29, which is highly unusual for us to do that, but we feel it's our job to accommodate these things. So we're not very far along, Councilman. I'm thinking, I'm leaving here today. I'm supposed to go into the rest of the day session with the club's attorneys to see to try to define the development issues and to see how long this negotiation process is going to last. But I'm thinking, we're not looking at 6 months. If I come back here I think it'll be well before that.
Any other questions of council before we accept the motion for approval of this resolution? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion. Second. Discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes with 7 members in favor and 1 against.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4 is consideration of the second one-year extension on the 5-year additional terms of 1 year each contained in the waste management contract of 4406 to 73111. Al?
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
You have before you, or in your package, document, if you recall, back on September the 7th of 2010 that we approved. And it basically, the initial term of the waste management contract, which is the garbage hauling contract for the city of Jackson, was 5 years, and it included the option for 5 additional terms at 1 year each. And it provided that this would happen unless either party by December of the preceding year opted out. So basically, let me just give you from a dollar and cents perspective. The first 5 years of the contract, you can see, ended here. The contract had been for 3% increases annually, and we came the next year of the first year of the option is based on the CPI index, and that was 3.2%. This year's CPI index is only 2.3%, so we would have that increase accordingly. It's averaged about 25 cents a year. So basically, all that we're asking for is approval to proceed with the second term of the initial 5-year options, of which we've already proceeded with the first.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion from
Question.
council?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Rump.
Mr. LaFoon, it's my understanding that we have checked with other carriers or other businesses that do waste management control. As far as price is concerned, this is by far the best price that we can determine, is that correct?
Yes, and going back to the initial contract bid, the closest bid that we had to the 766, which was the first year of the initial 5-year contract, was something like 1260. We get calls each year, most recently from Allied BFI out of Memphis, wanting us to convert to curbside pickup once a week, because that's a more automated process. No one else, to my knowledge, is interested in making the investment, which would amount to millions of dollars in equipment and people, to do a backdoor twice a week.
So this is basically our only option?
At this point, yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, do we not? Any additional discussion, council? Council, please vote.
And the motion passes.
You want to vote on that?
We vote to get Cisco $10,000. Before we get Cisco $10,000.
Okay, item 5 is consideration of resolution approving a continuation of single-family dwelling construction with sales to income-eligible home buyers and financing participation by the Jackson Housing Authority. And we have Mr. Henning here this morning to address that to council.
Morning, Mayor and
Morning.
Council.
Morning.
What we have here is a resolution requesting that we be allowed to continue with the redevelopment, basically, of the Phillip Street area. We initiated this back in 2006 after the tornado. We built 22 single-family houses, and we're asking now that you approve for us the ability to build an additional 6 units. Those were vacant lots along Phillip Street that we have options to acquire. And we've had funding become available to us from HUD for this specific purpose, and we would request that you give us permission to do so.
Move to approve.
Have a motion for approval and a second. Discussion?
Quick question.
Councilman Wallace.
You said originally we built 22 homes?
Yes.
And they've all been sold? or-
All been sold to
Okay.
income eligible
Is the
families.
revenue coming back in okay on those, or?
Revenues come back in. We didn't get all of what we put into
Okay.
it, but we got quite a bit.
This resolution is to add 15 more?
No, 6.
6.
Six, okay. I misunderstood you there. Six more, okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion, council? Council, please vote.
And the motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Standing. Item 6 is consideration of application participation in the after-school snack component, area eligible Tennessee Child and Adult Care Food Program. That is one that we approve each year, and that Bridget's here if you have any questions. That's basically for an after-school program at Westwood?
Yes.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second. Have a motion to approve, second. Any discussion, council? Council, please vote. Thank you very much, Bridget.
Vicki, are you voting?
I did.
Oh,
I did.
Vote is unanimous.
Item 7 is consideration of resolution authorizing the internal 3-year capital outlay note from the West Tennessee Healthcare Sportsplex to the general fund, the amount of $250,000 at 1% interest.
Council, what basically there has been on the books for, I think Mike Hewitt, our auditor, has said was 16 or 17 years, a provision that one fund cannot borrow from another fund without going through the process as they would with an outside entity, it being a capital outlay note, some kind of pledge to repay that. So last year, if you recall, we went back and looked at what had happened over the first 5 years of the Sportsplex activity, and basically we're talking about capital money that was spent. So when we came to you last year, the Sportsplex out of operating income was positive $218,000. Even when we got down to the non-operating revenues, that increased it to $258,000. But as anyone who has been in business knows, you can be profitable on paper because of depreciation substituting for the actual repayment of a loan. Just as our general fund, we have to go out and borrow monies. The Sportsplex in this case is coming to you requesting to follow the state procedure here, the state TCA code, and we would like to put in place a 3-year capital outlay note to fund these capital improvements that we have designated up here, and that would be paid back. It's a little bit awkward using the forms that the state has when you borrow from yourself instead of borrow from another fund, instead of from an outside entity. But basically what we're talking about is $250,000 over a 3-year period at a 1% interest rate. And where I came up with that, we have, of course, Karen has in the LPIG, which is our cash fund that we use for daily operating expense. She has money there that's only drawing like 0.2627% interest. But the money that we go out and invest, we have $7 million invested in Federal Home Loan Bank instruments and CDs. And that number, as any of you know from your own personal experience, first off, we're only allowed to go out 3 years. So the best we've been able to do with the 3-year investment is 1%. So what I'm saying to you is the Sportsplex in this case would be paying the general fund back the same interest rate that it would be earning with these other instruments in the 3-year investments. To give you just a brief overview of where the Sportsplex is at, because it was on a very aggressive payback of $9 million is where we started out. We're in year 6. We just, well, we haven't finished. We're still in year 6 tournaments. And that has been brought down to $5,385,000. So we paid off about 40% of that debt in a 6-year period, which is almost unheard of. If you look at Pringles Park, for example, is a 20-year loan on $6.5 million, so we're still paying on that. The building that we're sitting in right now is a 20-year bond. So for us to have an aggressive approach like this, we've actually had to take money from the operation. So this shows here that we've actually paid, if you look at the $5 million, which is principal and interest, and the monies that have been brought in by the funds that are specifically identified as going to debt service repayment, we had to actually come back and take another $2 million out of operations. So all that we're saying is it is very difficult for operations to be profitable plus pay back this debt of $9 million. We are now in a position where the hotel motel tax plus the state shared taxes from Exit 85 are such that they are if you just look at it on a one-year basis, 1-to-1, we received in $900,000 against $800,000 in debt service. So if we were starting out today in this position, I wouldn't have to come to you for any loan. But if you go back to the initial years, you can see that we were paying almost $1 million first year, second year, excuse me, and then $600,000, and only having $500,000 come in from those revenues that were specifically identified to repay back debt service. So the resolution that you have in front of you does have provisions in it for extending the term if we're not able to pay back within the 3 years. But these numbers here, unless something dramatically changes, shows that we're in a position now where we are getting enough money from the taxes to pay the debt service. So we should be able then to take, in this case, the delta is $100,000. We should be able then to pay back the general fund for the capital outlay that we're borrowing.
Okay, any questions from council?
One question. The payback schedule is just voluntary, I guess? There's not a specific payback schedule? They're supposed to be making a monthly payment on the note or anything?
There actually isn't in the TCA code. There's capital outlay notes for 3, 5, 7, or 12 years. But we're trying to pay it off, the sportsplex, when I say we, within the shortest period, within 3 years. And I could not find a specific amount that said X amount monthly or whatever.
So we just, as they get the money, they'll pay it back then. I
Yes.
hope they can do it within 3 years then.
Well, I gave a specific amount there, if you look at the payback schedule. This is our commitment to you. $50,000 the first year, $75,000 the second, and then the balance the third.
Okay, we can't read that back here. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're really just borrowing money from the people that we owe money to, and everything's in good shape.
Yes, as far as the financials on the sportsplex, it will show a positive. But when you come back to paying off a huge $9 million debt, and you're trying to do that out of operations, and then get additional capital like playgrounds and lighting, et cetera, you do need help. Yes.
Okay, any other questions from council?
Move to approve.
Have a motion for
Second.
approval, a second. Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Al. Item 8 is write-offs for city court receivables from 6/30/09 and prior, in the amount of roughly $4.75 million, as we take a deep breath, council.
Those, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Those
Councilman.
figures we received with respect to the collection agency, what percentage each year does that represent of the total each year?
Me and Mr. Hubbard questions, what's the sales?
We have.
In other words, they gave us 30,000, and they gave us 40. What percentage of the fines does that represent?
Maybe 5-6%. Maybe 5 or 6%.
This is through the collection
Yes, sir.
agency. So each year is 5-6% of $1 million, $1.5 million.
Roughly. And this is from 2009 to now?
Yes, they've actually moved up to parts of 2011. So they're collecting from 2011 back.
So what we're proposing to write off has already been gone through collections, they've already had an opportunity?
Yes. Yes, since '09, yeah.
And when we say write-offs, it doesn't mean we won't take their money later if they offer it, it just means
That's
that
my
we'll clean
understanding.
up the budget.
That's my understanding. It's just to take, this is an accounting procedure. I don't agree with it, but that's, accountants are different. So it's an accounting thing.
These city court receivables represent fines and
Yes, sir.
all of that?
Fines and costs.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the accounting principles of the write-offs and everything, but and we have a collection agent, but it doesn't send a good message to the violators.
I agree.
We have, Karen, we have had some collections, but they've been fairly minor since the contract. The contract's been in existence for 2 years. And to be honest, as far as some of the older, went back several years, and obviously the longer the fine is outstanding, the harder it is to collect. People leave the country and they leave the state, and family members pass away, and so they've had their work cut out for them. But we're still in the second year, and I think contractually, we were obligated for a 1-year contract with a 30-day notice to council, the contract. So right now, we're still with them. With council approval, we'll go ahead and look at whether to retain them maybe on a month-to-month basis to see if they're able to do any better, and if not, then we'll certainly take proposals from other companies who feel like they may be able to do a little better.
Sounds good.
I do have a question about the collection process. If an offender is incarcerated again or is found to be deceased, what is the process on collecting that debt? Is it written off then, or is it
If
still
they're
in the books?
deceased, we write it off. If they're incarcerated, like a lot of times they're incarcerated in another jurisdiction, or we just can't keep up with them. It's a fast-paced game, so it's hard to keep, and that's what the collection agent's finding out, that some of these people are incarcerated for they go back and commit another crime, and they're incarcerated for years, or they move, and it's just, it's I'm not gonna say impossible, but it's kind of improbable keeping up with.
When you find out they are incarcerated again, what's the process there, just to leave the fine on the books?
There's no process. We just leave, there's no statute that says we should or can write off the fine.
Mayor Gist, excuse me, council members Jerry Spohr, I'm with Spraggins, Barnett and Cobb, and I'm sitting in today for your city attorney, Mr. Cobb. Just for the record and to be clear, Councilwoman Foote actually nailed it on the head. This request, I believe, for the write-down is nothing more than an accounting exercise, much like a bank does when they have loans of a certain quality that don't give a clear or accurate indication of that bank's financial position. In essence, you have almost $5 million on your books that if folks of a financial nature were looking at it would think that you had that as an asset or money on your books, when in fact, because of the quality of it, you don't have it there, and that's all that's really happening. There's nothing in terms of a write-down that impacts legal rights. Legal rights of a defendant that owes a fine or court costs or a penalty can only be impacted by a court order or a statute of limitation. In particular, with questions you asked, Councilman Conger, if someone passes away owing city court, technically you can file a claim against their estate. Not likely that there would be a lot to recover, but procedurally that can be done. So the city court or the city maintains the rights to recover this money at any time, assuming no statute of limitations runs. how I guess that manifests, either you do as you've done, engage a professional service to go out and try to recover it, or if the offender comes back through the system, he's subject to sanctions at that point. So, being sensitive to the image of, are we just writing this off and letting offenders go? I see that, but from a legal standpoint, it's not happening. They still owe it. It's still an obligation, and if they find themselves back in the system, it would be a cause for sanctions against them, so.
Mr. Chairman, I duly respect what he's saying, and I appreciate what he's saying. It's a matter of accounting. But thusly, I still say that violators know how to get around the system. And if we do not back up our police department when they set all these fines, we're going, with the crime rate in this city, we're going to have trouble.
Trevor, can you go through if we write these off and they have subsidiary ledger in the court clerk's office, what would be the process if someone comes back in that owes money?
We'll, I believe they'll take them out of the computer as far as the money part, but the judgment is still in there, so we'll still know what they owe, even if it's out of the computer. So if they come back in for anything, and we find out who they are, and if they owe us money, we'll begin a collection process. We had a collection specialist, but she was transferred, so as soon as I train somebody, it seems like they're gone, so, it's hard to keep people, so that's one of the problems we have.
Mr. Chairman, you saying that we have 30 more days with the collection agency that we have, and then if council so desire, we'll look at another collection agency.
Well, we have longer than that, but we're past the 1-year contractual agreement. And from then on, it's on a 30-day notice. If we elect to terminate their contract, we have to let them know 30 days prior and seek proposals from other collection agencies. And since they were really responsible for collecting on this first round a lot of old debt that had been there for years and years and years and years, then I'm of the opinion right now to let them continue for several more months with some of the newer accounts which could be collectible, and see how they do on those.
Would the collection agency still have access to the written off accounts, or will we just, if the?
Now, that's a good question. You have to ask the auditors that. Will they still have?
They have that data. They actually pulled 7/1/12, their last report, so they have that data available.
So they could still actively pursue?
Yes.
And on the books from July 1, 2009 until current, you still have 1.4 million out there that has not been collected either.
But they could still pursue from 1996 if they.
Still do business with.
And if we were to switch collection companies, would they have access to that information, or?
Okay, any other questions or comments from council?
I guess one question I've got is not necessarily writing this off, but just on the collection in general. You know, you had sent some information about some other alternatives that we may use. Are we looking into those at least, as far as possibly, revoking driver's license, those types of things? I'm not recommending we doing that. I'm just saying at least look into it.
I think a lot of that is determined by Tennessee code on what penalties we can impose to try to recover the money. I do know received
You
from
can,
email.
you can probably suspend a license, but most of the fines we are owed are for a driver's license. So that's.
Well, I just don't think I was saying, we're just looking into alternatives to try to increase our collection percentage then. Is the only thing I want to make sure we are doing something along that line.
So basically, what we have before us this morning is a accounting procedure, is that correct?
To my knowledge.
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Additional discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes with 5 members in favor and 2 against.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, guys. Item 9 is the drug court treatment grant from the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. I think we have Damien here to answer any of the council question on this particular grant. Morning. You want to give us an overview of that, a quick overview?
Absolutely. What we're asking for is we moved departments this past year. We were under a 2-year grant contract with the Office of Criminal Justice Programs of the state of Tennessee. That changed in early June of this past year. In doing so, they moved us from OCJP to the Department of Mental Health. With that change, our current two-year grant contract we were under was canceled or ended, and then they immediately offered us another 1-year contract to finish out what would have been that 2-year term with the Department of Mental Health. So what we're asking today is just approval of essentially the exact same grant underneath a different division of the state.
Okay. Any questions of council? This is a grant that has been a continuing grant for drug court.
It is. We've actually had grant from the state of Tennessee since 2002, 2003.
Just coming from a different arm of state government.
That's correct.
Okay, is there a motion for
Move
approval?
to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. Discussion, council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 10 is consideration of contract between Community Development Partners, LLC, and the City of Jackson, Tennessee. I think you all have a copy of that contract, and
Move the approval.
we
Second.
have
Second.
a discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes with 6 members in favor and 1 abstaining.
Board appointments, we have a couple from the Board of Zoning Appeals, the reappointments of Patty Lewis and Thomas Barghese. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
The Library Board, the appointments of Glenn Balk and Elaine Christian.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
And on the Tree Board, reappointments of Charles Baldwin, Nathan Carter, and David Mathis.
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And item 12 is budget amendments. Ms. Bell?
We have one amendment this morning. We are asking for the transfer of funds from the drug fund reserve to drug fund capital to pay for the video arraignment equipment that will be installed in the city court facilities and the Madison County Jail. The Sheriff's Department has agreed to pay one half, and the other half, $16,450, will come from the drug fund.
Move the approval.
Motion second. Discussion. Council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Karen. Final items, consideration of invoices over 10,000.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.
That's how we were hooked up until we wake up. That's right.